Hello, my dear listeners. My name is Kishore Ganesh, and in this episode of the Vocal About Visuals podcast, I'll be reviewing a brand new Tamil language film, which is AR Murugadoss's Madharasi, starring Sivakarthikeyan, Rukmini Vasanth, Biju Menon, Vikranth, Vidyut Jamwal, and a bunch of others. And no, you still can't call us that. Of course, one could say, Kishore, in 2025, you don't need to remind people of this. But to that, my counterpoint is just a couple of weeks back, there was the release of this magnum opus called Param Sundari, which is kind of my checkmate to all the reservations against me putting out this PSA. I know. When you look at the title of this podcast, you might be wondering why is this guy stating adjectives that are largely synonyms of each other? They all mean the same thing, right? Average, meh, blah. But the reason why I'm using all these three is because I think if I use just one word to communicate my feelings about this film, it is not enough. But with three words, even if they do mean the same thing, I think that conveys what I'm actually feeling on the inside. Now, just because the movie is meh, it doesn't mean that there are no positives in the movie. There was one moment in the movie which is actually a sweet romantic moment between the hero and the heroine, which was genuinely heartwarming. Post this, we have an excellent idea of giving the hero a potent disadvantage, which in turn becomes his greatest strength. And then there were a few fight scenes. Mind you, not all the fight scenes, but a few which really showed some inventiveness and brutality, which made them interesting. There is Sivakarthikeyan's performance and Murgadoss's world building to some extent again, which are engaging. And then there is Sudeep Elemon's cinematography, which does a lot for that film in terms of setting the tone for this world of guns, public shootouts, and crime syndicates. But apart from this, I found this movie to be a victim of convenient and half-baked writing, derivative songs and bad BGM, and stunt sequences with unfulfilled potential. It was almost like every department, especially the writing, stunts, and music, was plagued by the sense of haste due to which good ideas couldn't get fleshed out on the screen. And if we compare it to one of Murgadoss's earlier action thrillers, Tupaki, Madharasi lacks refinement and polish. To give the audience some fun trivia about the connections that exist between Tupaki and Madharasi, of course, one thing being they are both made by Murgadoss, is that both of course share the genre, which are action thrillers. But apart from that, they also share the villain, Vidyut Jamwal. And there is also the famous passing of the gun or Tupaki scene that occurred from Vijay to Sivakarthikeyan in the movie Goat. So as a result, during the audio launch of this film and also all the marketing that happened, this connective tissue between Tupaki and Madharasi was constantly being bubbled up. But the only way that connection helped me is that it gave me a sense of reference as to why Tupaki worked and why Madharasi has kind of become mediocre. Now, I'm not saying that every thriller that Murugadoss ever makes is going to be a Tupaki because honestly, Tupaki is one of the best action thrillers to be ever made in India. So, comparing Madrasi with that is going to be unfair. But where the comparison helps is to identify the why behind Tupaki's greatness, which in extension informs us about Madrasi's mediocrity. And the reasons for this are a sense of haste, which is visible in the work of all departments, but especially in the writing, the music, and the stunts. In the writing, we see a lack of fleshing out of the universe, and in some cases, even the relationships between the characters. Examples of this would be the lack of media presence in this universe or the half-baked romance between Sivakarthikeyan and Rukmini, barring that one sweet scene that I mentioned before. You will spot it as soon as you see the movie. So don't worry about that and no spoilers. In the music department, it distinctly feels that Anirudh has gotten one of his assistants to do the music for this film because maybe he was involved in doing a more important project as far as he is concerned in the form of Coolie. And in the stunts, well, the stunts are led on by the cinematographer who has otherwise done a phenomenal job, the editor, and the choreographers. This is down to the use of a fair bit of shaky cam by the cinematographer, the abrupt cuts by the editor, and a lack of imagination and scale from the stunt choreographers. If the cinematographer uses a lot of shaky cam, then I guess that has to be compensated with the scale and length of the action scenes. Shorter sequences plus shaky cam gives off a feeling of a cop out with the action, which is a cardinal sin in an action movie. Now, who knows what the real reasons are for all of this? Maybe Murgadoss's previous flops resulted in a lower budget, which led to a reduction across the board from the number of days to shoot to the extras to the scale of the action. Which, if so, is quite sad because in the midst of this haste, I could see a whole bunch of good ideas like the presence of this crime syndicate with interesting characters like this lady crime boss, the man with the steel hand, and the enemy who's overpowered get wasted because they stop at the level of just making an appearance in the film and not going beyond that. All in all, I would say that minus any expectation, Madrasi is a meh one time watch. But if you, like me, had any serious expectations from this film, then unfortunately you would actually be left disappointed. Once again, my name is Kishore Ganesh. This is the Vocal About Visuals podcast, and thank you, my dear listeners, for your time and for listening.